You can buy gold right now in India between $1,700 an ounce, and during the last 3 weeks, it is spiked up to as much as 3,000 US dollar per ounce. This is the desperation of people. Most of the luxury items disappeared the night the currency was demonetized because people rushed into the market to buy as much gold as possible.
Welcome to the Power and Market Report. I'm Albert Liu, joined once again by Jayant Bhandari. He is a natural resource investor and an advisor to institutional investors. He joins us today from Dubai. Jayant, thanks for joining me once again. How are you?
Very good, Albert. Thanks for having me again.
It's a pleasure. And I noticed, Jayant, you have been blogging ferociously about the events in India that have taken place since the beginning of November, having to do with them recalling, demonetizing certain notes. I want to get to that, but as an introduction, can you just talk about the market for black money in India? Talk about Modi and maybe what some of his motivations may be to tamper with the money system in India?
Okay, so Albert, the reality is that I am 49 years old and I have yet to meet a public servant in India who does not ask for a bribe. It's a thoroughly and extremely corrupt political system in India. Now, that is really the fountainhead of a lot of corrupt money, where the cash is. Now, what Modi is trying to do is to convert India into a cashless society. Now, this is a society whose GDP per capita is about 1,700 US dollar per year. These are the people, half of who don't have electricity supply, water supply, access to toilets, no housing, half of the people go to Hungary. Can you really imagine that such a society can go cashless? These are uneducated people who cannot even write their own names. What Modi is trying to do is to make sure that all these people pay their taxes properly. What he is not trying to do is the most difficult job, which is to control corruption at the level of the government. What I have seen over the last 3 years, 2.5, 3 years of his reign on India, control of government over people's lives has increased significantly. Regulations have gone up, taxes have gone up. Now, you tell me, Albert, how is that a recipe for reduction in corruption? What is happening right now at this moment is that because of demonetization that you just referred to, corruption has skyrocketed in the country. Tax authorities are asking for bribes and they are getting it exactly what they are asking for. People are groveling, people are begging, and people are giving them whatever money tax authorities are asking for as bribes. So corruption is all over the country. It is huge, and it's becoming much worse right now.
If something like this was tried in North America, I would just immediately assume that the motivation would be to dislodge this black money or the underground economy that exists in the private sector. You're saying that this is primarily a result of government corruption, the idea that you have this money stashed away. How big of a problem is it, though, in the private sector, small businesses and so forth? Are they hiding this black money as well?
Okay, so Albert, you touched on an extremely good point. Looking at things from American viewpoint, people have a tendency to assume that government of India is doing the right thing. But what they are doing, and the right thing in the sense that they might be trying to control corruption, what they're doing has nothing to do with that. Western people have misunderstood this event in India. Now, you're responding to your question on how this might be affecting the black market in the private sector. Remember, if I have to offer bribes at every step of my life, I have to generate unaccounted cash to give as bribe. How will I do it otherwise? Now, I have to bribe irrespective of whether I have fully accounted money or not fully accounted money. So this is a very strange situation that government is asking people to do full accounting while they still have to pay bribes. But also, what is unaccounted money among the private sector? In a country with GDP of $1,700 per capita, most of the black money, the corrupt money, is in the hands of people who work for the government and also politicians, bureaucrats, and some corporations who work hand in glove with the government. Now, all these people have been left completely untouched by all these events. The people who are being troubled are people who have nothing to do with any of this thing. 97% of Indian consumer transactions are cash transactions. Now, because the level of cash transaction is so high, people do have to keep a lot of cash with them. It does not mean it's illegal in the sense it's bad money or unaccounted money or money that hasn't paid its taxes. They are the people who are being fleeced and their money has been stolen by the government, particularly of the lowest strata of the society, the 50% poorest people who have no bank accounts, and people who don't have access to converting their bad currency into good currency.
Do you believe then that the Modi government is actually trying to target this black money for taxation purposes? Because it seems like from what you just said, it's not working very well. Most of the money is held by people within the government, and they're very good at circumventing these types of maneuvers. So is it a case of him being insincere? This is not the real story, or is it a case of the typical stupid meets power, and then it's just a comedy of errors after that?
I think he's being sincere. He's sincere because he does want to remove unaccounted money from the system. The way you have to understand his personality, he has been a bully all his life. What he wants to do is to centralize all powers in his hands. He wants people to become cog in a big machine in which there are 1.3 billion slaves operating to glorify Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India. That's his past. He has extraordinarily dictatorial tendencies. Also, this is the worst kind of corruption possible, which is Narendra Modi trying to do, which is personal glorification and people paying a huge amount of taxes for his own benefit. So yes, he's sincere in the sense that he does not want other people to take money, but he wants all that to accumulate to himself. India is on a path to become an Eritrea. Eritrea has virtually no corruption, but it's an extremely wretched, poor, and horrible country to live in.
Okay, so let's go into the events as they occurred. You have 5 blog posts, which I'll link to on the show notes page. But it started essentially, November 5th, to take advantage of the U.S. news cycle that was focused exclusively on the U.S. election?
It happened on 8th of November, Albert, on the night of 8th of November, India time, and Modi announced that event to coincide with the American elections so that everyone's focus would be on American elections rather than on the events in India. He wanted to slow down fall in Indian rupee and the fall in the Indian stock market. And the Western markets haven't really understood this event properly. Most people I talk with don't even know that this has been happening in India right now because it's not being covered properly in the Western press. And when it is covered, it is covered as if it's a good thing happening in the country. The result is that Indian stock market has only fallen by a few percentage points. Indian currency has fallen by only a few percentage points. But as this situation unravels, as the Western media and Western economists really understand what is actually happening in India, I think Indian stock market might fall. I'm not sure if it will fall or not, because government has actually taken over control, frozen all your bank accounts and all your electronic money. But almost certainly, Indian currency will fall quite a bit, in my view, going forward.
Okay, yet on the ground, this is a massively deflationary event, right? They took away over 80% of the currency, effectively, without the apparatus to replace that with the new currency. So you see lines, everything you would expect, correct? You see lines going, shortages, people lining up, prices going through the roof. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing on the ground there.
So, Albert, if you look at my blog posts, I have written 5 big articles so far. I have done a lot of talks on this subject. I have linked a lot of videos in those. The country is in an utter chaos right now. There are lineups all over the country. Every bank has lineup, and if there's no lineup, it only means that the bank has run out of cash, or it is only 3 o'clock in the morning, or the banks are no longer converting the money. The situation is extremely chaotic, particularly for the poorest people in the society.
Yeah, and I did go through those posts. You see it getting progressively worse. The first time you post about waiting for 2 or 3 hours to exchange some of this bad money. But then it gets progressively worse. As you said, at one point you accompanied a friend back to the post office to get his money exchanged. That's the definition of a good friend, I think, someone who would endure that twice. But you did, and you saw it at that point getting much worse. And then later on, the pictures are just incredible. You have people literally dying in line, waiting to change their money.
Officially, close to 100 people have died in those lineups already. Old people. I know personally many weddings that have been cancelled because people have no cash to do weddings anymore. People have died at the hospitals because they don't have cash anymore to pay to the hospitals. And the lineups have been growing and huge, but government has now refused to convert bad money into good money. Now you must deposit those into the bank accounts, which means that disabled people, old people, women who don't want to be molested in those crazy lineups have effectively failed to convert their money. And now they have only one option, which is to open a bank account, which is impossible because there are such long lineups outside the bank that the bank officers have no time to open bank accounts. This 50% of the population have no access to a system to convert their bad money into good money.
You talk a little bit about some arbitrage going on. Certain places, hospitals, gas stations, pharmaceutical shops, those places are supposed to take the old bills, but instead of doing that, many of them are opting to basically take advantage of the arbitrage, correct?
Albert, as I said, the level of corruption has grown much wider and much deeper right now. So markets are mostly empty right now because people are not buying anything. The economy has stagnated completely. Now, even if the markets are open, the workers are not there. And the reason workers are not there is because they are lining up outside banks for someone else to deposit money in their own bank accounts to get a cut from the money that they deposit in their own bank accounts. So effectively, someone with a lot of cash can sell his cash for a 20% discount to these people who are now organized under a mafia. And these people then line up to convert illegal money, banned money into legal tender. This also means that literally tens of millions of people are now doing nothing but lining up outside banks for this conversion. These people have got a taste for easy money. They are not working anymore. They are not working in the farms or in shops or in factories. They're skipping their work because they're making 10 times more their money lining up. They have got a taste for easy money. They also have found out who has a lot of money. And a whole system of mafia has developed in the country to do this conversion. Now imagine prohibition period in the US. It's the same thing happening in India now. This mafia will continue to exist and will continue to be used for more illegal activities. Human trafficking will go up, drug dealings will go up in the country, because once this demonetization is over, they will use their mafia organization for something else.
Right, and you would expect all of these services to appear on a free market, given the constraint, particularly the discounting of bills. You say with a 20% haircut, you can just give your money to someone. That money gets turned in. Interestingly enough, though, as you pointed out, you paraphrase Gresham's law and you talk about how all the good money is disappearing, and then these so-called illegal notes are really the ones that are circulating.
Right. So, yeah, this is so funny, Albert. And that's why I'm spending a lot of time in India right now to make sure I see what is actually happening in the country. This is the funniest thing. Remember, 88% of the currency, monetary value of the currency has been made illegal. So 12% that was still legal is now going under the carpet. People are keeping that currency with themselves. 88% of the money that they still have are either getting deposited in the banks or they are using it for circulation, for the transaction purposes. Virtually everyone I see is refusing to pay in legal tender these days. They want to use their illegal banned 500 rupee note and 1000 rupee notes. In fact, in the gold market in the city where I am in, the gold shops are not taking legal money. They have completely stopped taking legal money. The only way you can buy gold is by using the illegal money. It's an extraordinarily Orwellian situation, and I don't really understand because what is happening, because there's such a complicated mafia, corrupt practices. The use of illegal money has come into existence that you don't even know the full nuances of it, and we won't know about it for the next few weeks or next few months.
That's very interesting. So the price of gold priced in illegal money must be attractive to retail gold dealers. You can buy gold right now in India between $1,700 an ounce, and during the last 3 weeks, it is spiked up to as much as $3,000 per ounce. This is the desperation of people. Most of the luxury items disappeared the night the currency was demonetized, because people rushed into the market to buy as much gold as possible, as much of expensive watches or perfume as possible. And this was a very funny situation, how people react to this situation, how they try to get rid of their bad money, but try to preserve their good money with themselves. But remember, this is leading to a catastrophic situation right now. What is happening is that by the end of December 2016, conversion will completely stop. At that point, the good money will be under the carpet, and there will be no more money left over for doing real transactions. There will be no cash available. There's already no cash available, but then there will be completely no cash available. So this has created tremendous hardships for people. It's a tragedy. Are you seeing alternative monies evolve into the market, penetrate the market, aside from these banned notes?
So it has only been about 3 weeks so far since demonetization was put into, the notification was issued. So it's too early to say what kind of new money is evolving. But I keep hearing that among the poorest section of the society, barter system is now in place. People, you can buy vegetables and sell them time on your cell phone, or you can exchange your something for something else. So among the villages and among the lowest strata of the society, barter system is now in place. Among the people who have to use a lot of cash, I have heard, and I haven't seen it happening, but I have seen people starting to discuss about the possibility of using gold biscuits for transaction purposes. Remember, the fact is whether the country cannot replace all the cash anyway. Even if they could replace all the cash, people will not use cash anymore. People are very worried. People will not trust this government currency anymore. And they will use gold or something else to do their transactions going forward. This will pick up going forward.
People now are getting a very harsh lesson in Gresham's law. Might as well just rename it Modi's law, because that's how people are going to remember it. Indians in general, by my observation, have an affinity for gold that is unmatched in the West anyway. And it just seems sort of ironic that they're being caught off guard in this situation. What are you seeing in terms of, I guess, the evolution of people's thought? I know it's only been 1 month, but there was a reason why people liked gold for all those years, and now when they need it, it appears they've been caught off guard.
Well, firstly, they haven't really been caught off guard. People have always kept their money in properties and gold and anywhere they could keep their money. The cash in circulation that has been banned represents a mere about 10% of GDP of the country. And most of that cash was in the hands of poor people anyway. So the reality is that people who have black money or people who have a lot of money, they have already kept their money in gold and property. The only thing that will happen going forward is that whatever cash that they had at their home for transactional purposes will no longer be kept anymore, because they would be afraid of keeping that money in cash going forward. Now, as far as gold being affinity for gold, Indians will, in my view, going forward, put more of their money in gold. And the reason, Albert, historically Indians have kept so much gold with them is that it makes no sense to invest in India. India is a negative yielding economy. It has always been a negative yielding economy, except for the last 2 or 3 decades. And this is coming back again. Government is forcing you to keep your money in bank, which offers you a negative real interest rate. The stock market has historically offered a negative yield on your money. So people will now be tempted to keep as much of their money in gold as possible. But there's only one problem with this. Their bank accounts are effectively frozen right now. This is Cyprus 10 times over. You don't have access to your own bank accounts right now.
It's tragic. Do you expect, because of what you just explained, that this is really a transactional problem more than a savings problem? Do you expect that silver will become more popular?
It is very likely if government puts a ban on gold, which it effectively has already. So what has government done is that it came out with a notification saying that a married woman can, if she has more than 500 grams of gold in jewelry, the word jewelry was used in their release. If she has more than 500 grams of jewelry, she could be assessed for tax, which in India speak, the Orwellian speak, the double speak of India, it means that anyone who has more than 500 grams of gold is in trouble. And even if that 500 grams of gold is in biscuit form, he or she is in trouble anyway. So government of India has effectively put a ban on gold, which means that bank lockers are now empty. People are taking out their gold from their bank lockers and taking that gold home. Now you can imagine the effect it will have on crime rate, because criminals now know that you have gold at home. Now, so gold is gone to home, crimes will go up, so people will take protective measures. Now, when I said about Narendra Modi, he's an extremely simplistic person. He's a bully who does not understand the complexity of life, that life is an extremely complex affair, and there are all those unseen, unintended consequences. But he is surrounded by yes men. And international media, international economists, and IMF are going along with him. So he gets a feeling that whatever he does is the right thing to do, and people will follow. The reality also, Albert, is that a lot of Indians, particularly the salaried middle class of India, Indians living outside India, are going along with Modi. Most of these people have been big supporter of this demonetization scheme.
Yeah, and you were very hard on those people in your writing, Jayant. You mentioned that this to you looks like Cyprus tenfold. And one thing that strikes me is you mentioned many times throughout the blog that Modi still has support. He has support of, especially of the masses. And that's the first thing that stuck out in my mind, because if you're the typical politician, the last thing you want to see is an angry mob anywhere. And if you recall with Cyprus, when the banks failed and they were pondering how to solve that situation, they floated the idea of bail-in, haircuts on deposits, even the small accounts they were going to bail in. And that was met with a lot of hostility, and that caused them to change course. And they changed course to something that was more agreeable to the masses. I don't sense that here. I don't sense that the Modi government is at all discouraged by all of this, the tragic events that have occurred since then. Why do you think that is? How come they can get away with something like this that seems to be, I mean, it just seems to be utter devastation there. Why can they get away with it?
Well, so people I see when I go to see these lineups, people are fighting with each other, people are angry, but people are not necessarily angry with Modi. Although I have to say the anger against Modi is increasing, and I think it will continue to increase as time passes. But let's explore why people are going along, or why they have so far gone along with Modi. Now, Albert, this is something that Western people have a very hard time understanding. The concept of reason is almost exclusively a Western concept. India is an extraordinarily irrational and superstitious society, which means that people do not understand the concept of causality. When they get frustrated in the lineup, their brain does not tell them that this problem is coming because of Modi. They take out their anger on whosoever they can immediately take their anger on, who is the person next standing to them in the lineups. Now, these people also don't have the moral instincts. So they will suffer instead of rebelling and fighting against and what is clearly a problem created by someone else. It's their own legitimate money. They should be fighting against Modi. Why would be rebelling against him? But these people are not, because they don't have the moral instincts. They would rather suffer than fight. And this is the sad situation with this society. Now, salaried middle class who are so-called educated in any society should be the backbone. The middle class should be the backbone, intellectual backbone of the society. But this is an amazing thing I have seen, Albert. Despite the so-called huge increase in education, these people haven't become rational. They haven't really got the moral instinct. And you can only have moral instincts if you are rational. This means that as long as they are themselves not suffering, they don't see a problem. they prefer to assume and claim a higher moral ground for themselves because they are not suffering anyway. And salaried middle class was well prepared for all these things, so they are not suffering right now. What they have forgotten to take into account is that their salaries are not incashable anymore, and as time passes by, they will start to suffer, and that's when they will start blaming Modi for the problems that he has created.
Okay, but it's possible that by then you'll have so much power that these changes will be irreversible. You talk also about how you observe that India is rapidly devolving into a police state. And one of the symptoms that you cite is changes in the media, changes in the courts, changes in the opposition, but also laws that require compulsory playing of India's national anthem at the cinema. Can you talk about that?
Oh God, Albert, yes, absolutely. And this is so funny. People just don't see this happening. India is rapidly on a path to becoming a police state. Now, this is not even the running of anthem in cinema is not even a law. Supreme Court took a decision to compulsorily require cinema halls to play anthem, and they have insisted that you must stand up when the anthem is run before the start of every movie in the cinema halls. Now, I don't have a clue, and I had a talk with a Supreme Court lawyer recently, and he said, listen, Supreme Court, there's no constitutional provision for Supreme Court to pass such a instruction, but they passed it anyway. But you can imagine the kind of nationalism has gone into the society in the recent year, that people are going along with it. So anyone who really pays attention to these kind of things immediately tends to realize that India is becoming a police state. Now, if I don't stand up in national anthem, I can be taken to prison and actually charged by the court for showing disrespect to the national anthem and the flag. But this is not just cinema halls. In social functions, now people run national anthem. It's just absolutely crazy. However, government has excluded itself. The Supreme Court excluded itself when a petition was filed that there should be national anthem run at courts. But they said, don't stretch it too much. Just run it in cinema halls, which is so Orwellian. If you really had to run it in the Supreme Court, not in the cinema halls.
Yeah, absolutely Orwellian. And as I said before, you are very tough on the middle class. You blame them for lacking moral instincts and not being able to really grasp the concept of individual liberty. I'm wondering, do you see this elsewhere? I think the reason that the IMF and some of these world bodies are supportive of what Modi's doing is because it's a test case for other places. Have you seen other places where you believe that they're on the brink of trying something like this?
Well, I think, Albert, emerging markets are in a much worse shape than the Western countries are today. You look at the whole of Middle East, and I'm in the Middle East right now. The whole of the Middle East is suffering institutionally and economically. Africa, every place in Africa is suffering. I can't imagine a place which is not on a way to a political and social crisis in Africa. You see the same thing in most of South America, Venezuela, Brazil. Those countries are imploding. So there's a major crisis in a lot of emerging markets, and I'm excluding the Far East, East Asia from this. But most of the emerging markets are creaking because remember, a lot of institutions that they have were imposed by the Western colonial powers. And those institutions do not go along with the underlying cultures of these societies. The concept of paper money, everything has been corrupted, mutated, and degraded in these emerging markets. And I think they will face the most problem going forward. But again, you have the same problem in the Western society as well. There is a tendency among the Western governments to keep increasing regulations because they can see that they are failing to control their people because people have become very mobile. People have a lot of ways to live their life. So the control on lives is going up everywhere. And it seems to me that people everywhere have become so nationalistic and indoctrinated because of public educational system that the masses tend to go along with the government rather than resist the, the loss of their liberties.
I'm going to wrap it up soon, Jayant. I just want to leave you with a quote that I have to admit made me laugh a little bit. It says, I am sometimes too optimistic about India and expect too much goodness from Indians, and I was wrong. That amazingly was written by you. And as someone who enjoys reading your blog and enjoys following you on Facebook, I would not expect you to write something like that. I wonder if we did a poll on your Facebook account to see how many of your readers actually agreed with this statement. Do you think that you're too optimistic about India and its people?
Well, I knew that India would become a police state. I knew that India would disintegrate into smaller countries. I knew that things would continue to worsen culturally and socially in India. But I was too optimistic. I thought it would take a few decades for that to happen. In my view, Modi has set into place events, and Indian middle class has allowed him to set those events into place that will lead to worsening of the social situation, cultural situation, and the police state situation in the country much more rapidly. So from that point of view, I was too optimistic. I think India is headed towards a horrible time rather rapidly.
Yeah, the horrible time may be inevitable, and I'd like to ask you, since you mention it, would you applaud the disintegration of the nation state into numerous smaller states? And is this then some kind of weird version of progress?
Oh, I would applaud disintegration of India into something like 50 countries. India, as it exists today, never existed before the British started to rule India. They consolidated this landmass into one country. And it was perfectly fine as long as they were running India, and they should have continued to run India, in my view. But after they left, Indians, because they come from a different culture, do not have the capabilities or organizational skills to run an organization of this kind. So the tendency of this nation state is to disintegrate over a period of time. Now, it will disintegrate, and it will eventually be very good for these people, because as smaller countries, they will have no armies, there will be more free trade, there will be more free competition between the states as it exists in parts of Western Europe. The big problem, Albert, is that there is zero constitutional provision for disintegration of the country, for secession from India. This also means, along with the fact that Indians have become extremely nationalistic in this very tribal society, that there are too many stresses into the system. When disintegration happens, and it will happen sooner rather than later, in my view, when it happens, it will accompany a massive, massive amount of violence. Tens of millions of people will die. This is going to be a horrible situation facing 1 out of every 5 human beings on the planet.
Kind of an unfortunate note to conclude this interview, but thank you very much, Jayant. I want to thank you for coming on, and I look forward to doing it with you again. Viewers can catch up with you at your website, jayantbhandari.com. I noticed that you blog at the Acting Man. I believe it's actingman.com with a hyphen. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's correct, Albert. Jayantbhandari.com is my personal website, but as far as this demonetization case is concerned, I'm blogging all my articles on actingman.com, so that hopefully I write something every week or so as to eventually write a full book on how money dies and how a nation state evolves into a police state. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope I'm proven wrong, but that's what I see clearly happening in this country. And I want to document it for the future generations to read, despite knowing that people don't learn from history.
Well, some of us appreciate it. Jayant, thank you very much. I'll also add that you're the founder and the organizer of Capitalism and Morality Conference in Vancouver. We're going to have another great time in 2017, so check out his website for that. Jayant, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, Albert.
Don't forget to visit powerandmarket.com for insightful interviews with the world's leading experts in economics, finance, and investing. Till next time, take care.